Hello, I'm Lori Townsend, News Director for the Alaska Public Radio Network. The film you've just seen leaves a lot of questions unanswered and has for nearly a decade. Joining me now is Rick Wilder. Rick is the air traffic controller who was in the control room in Anchorage on that day, on September 11th, 2001. Rick, thanks for joining me and agreeing to talk about this. Let's start with what happened shortly after 9 o'clock when Anchorage was told, the air traffic controllers were told that a text message from this Korean passenger jet had HJK in a text message. What happened then? What were you told?
I was just told the basic information. I wasn't working the aircraft at that time. Someone else was, but I did get a copy of the message and look at it. And when I saw HJK, I thought, well, it didn't look right. It didn't look like anything was amiss to me. Usually HIJK would be what Hijack would be going for. So I didn't really think much about it. There was a lot of activity surrounding the aircraft, but to me, it just looked like a random message or a slip up or a mix up, and I'm not really sure what actually happened at that point.
Why was the decision made to send the jet to Whitehorse rather than just land it in Anchorage?
That is a good question. The only way I could answer that is that they just didn't want the aircraft to land on U.S. soil. For what reason, I don't know, because I felt like when we were sending the aircraft to Vancouver, routing aircraft to Vancouver, and then the aircraft to Whitehorse, I was thinking, well, we're shoveling our mess off onto our Canadian friends, and I thought that was a little bit odd. I guess maybe the threat at Anchorage or Fairbanks was seen as too great for the aircraft, for a hijacked aircraft to land here.
When was it that you became involved directly with talking to the pilot?
The aircraft was already somewhat en route to Whitehorse. He was being vectored around, and he was following the directions, all the instructions that ATC was giving him. So there wasn't really an issue with him, but he was flying north of Anchorage in the sector that I was working at the time, work at Anchorage Center, so it's not just a localized Anchorage area. It's a large area surrounding the Anchorage area. It goes up to Talkeet and out west to Iliamna and quite a ways down to the Southern Ocean. And he was the Korean Air was northwest of Anchorage, maybe 150 miles when I started talking to him. I don't know the exact position, but at that point there was still some question as to whether he was being unlawfully interfered with. And that, I thought we had already gone through all that, but there were fighters still tagging along with him. So there was still some suspicion. And that's I worked him for 20 minutes, probably 15 to 20 minutes. It wasn't a real long period of time.
At some point, the passenger jet was squawking a code in the 5000s, meaning that everything is status quo, or that's what it's supposed to mean. Mm-hmm. But at some point, you were given an order from FAA headquarters in Washington, D.C. that seemed quite strange. Talk about what happened then.
Yeah, I've never had to issue a hijack squawk to an aircraft. I mean, we can issue an emergency code if we think the aircraft is having an issue. And what they do when they squawk, there's 3 particular codes that they can squawk, and it's basically emergency radio failure hijack. And it actually tags up on other controller scopes, and also scopes down the lower 48, if like at the command center, anybody, probably the military. I can't really speak to how their equipment works, but it just kind of tags them up a little bit differently. So it's a more pronounced target on the scope. So I've never had to do it before. I never had to do it after that. It was a strange request at the time. I never read it in the books where you had to do that. I've never, we wouldn't necessarily ever issue that code to an aircraft, because the way I look at it, it's not ours to issue, it's the pilot's to issue, because it's a very serious code. So the 7500 squawk was the hijack code, is was actually, a supervisor came down and said, we need to have the Korean Air squawk 7500. And I said, well, I didn't really think it was the right thing to do. So they actually left and regrouped and talked about it. And I had my opinions of why it wasn't, but then later I was ordered to do it. So.
And what were your thoughts? Why did you not want to do that?
We'd already had some miscommunication with the military that morning. There'd already been some threats to shoot down some aircraft. One that I was particularly working, or probably others that happened to, that if they didn't follow whatever air traffic commands that we issued at the time, that they would be shot down. And I had an aircraft that was just south of Anchorage. On his way in, he was told to land at Anchorage. And at 40 miles south of Anchorage, I was told to turn him or he would be shot down. And I was realizing there was a lot of miscommunications with the civilian sector and the military sector. There were fighters with this Korean Air, and with the kind of communications that occur, or breakdowns we'd say occasionally that occur between the civilians and the military, my first thought, and after I guess you'd say 19 years of experience, I knew how the military operates to an extent, and I thought, well, what if the guy's trigger happy? That's not a bad thing. You know, that's their job, and that's not my job, is to destroy aircraft of that series. And if they saw this code, I was afraid that it would, well, I was very afraid. I was more than afraid. It was probably the worst thing I ever had to do in my life, to issue the code.
Do you know who gave the order from the FAA in Washington, D.C.?
I think I do, but I'm not sure how it was derived. I don't know who told the person. I'm not sure if the person that gave that order, headquarters is actually, it was just, I believe, if I'm hearing this or I'm understanding it right, these instructions were coming for what they called headquarters, which is the Traffic Management Control Center in the lower 48. It's pretty much the whole command center or traffic management system for all of the U.S. airspace. I was actually assigned traffic management locally at the center at that time. I was a traffic management coordinator, but I just happened to work traffic also. So I interact with these people, and as far as who made the decision, I don't know, but I do understand a little bit of why. I understand why they wanted to do this, and my thoughts, you know, I explained about what my concerns were, but I believe the concerns of management were more, they wanted everybody to see the aircraft. They wanted the military to be aware of it. They wanted this, you know, this aircraft to brighten up on their scope, so to speak, or become very prominent so they could find it and track it. And I thought in the back of my mind, that must be why they're wanting to do it, but it's really not the right thing to do. So yes, it came from the Traffic Management Center. I think is what they were calling headquarters, from the best I could tell. I never asked anybody. I really didn't want to know at the time.
Do you think the order came from headquarters, what you're referring to as headquarters, or do you think it originated farther up the chain of command than from them?
What little bit I've read, and I haven't listened to tapes, I just read a few logs that were publicly available, and I really can't determine who gave the order. So it could have been within the headquarters, it could have been outside. Everything would be speculation for me, but from what I read, it almost looked like it was determined locally at what we call headquarters, but there could have been outside, you know, pressure to have this aircraft squawk a code that would be recognizable, where he would actually be more prominent on displays for, you know, any military personnel or any personnel at any point that had access to the radar data we were looking at. So, yeah.
You were a commercial pilot before you were an air traffic controller for 25 years. Can you ever imagine a circumstance where it would seem appropriate for an air traffic controller to order a jet, a jet full of passengers to squawk that they have hijackers on board, especially in light of the fact that they're being escorted by F-15s?
No, it's absolutely, that was the problem I was having with it. I could not fathom any scenario that would really warrant that to happen. Management, on the other hand, I'm not sure what their experience is. The people, calling the shots will say. I don't know what experience they had, but I have ground experience, and that's what I was drawing from as a pilot, as a controller for a while. Understand interactions between military and civilian sectors, and how breakdowns can occur and accidents can happen. That's what I was looking at, the whole picture. I wasn't, removed from it. I guess if I was far removed from the situation, I might have reacted differently or wanted it to happen as a convenience method for other people to see it. But no, there's no reason why a controller would ever want to issue that I can come up with. You might could ask a dozen controllers and somebody might say yes, but it really made no sense to me.
Looking back now, nearly 10 years, why have you decided to speak out about this now?
It's always something that's kind of haunted me, and it's the reason that it's a kind of a haunting issue is I've had aircraft that I've been working before that have had a lot of issues that have crashed. We'll say that I've had pilots, I've heard screams going as they've been going down, you might say, in the past. But all those were beyond my control. I didn't issue direct orders. I didn't tell someone to do something that could result in the destruction of their aircraft. My job was for safety and to make sure the flights were moved safely and efficiently. That's what an air traffic controller does. In my opinion, what I had to do was something that could have resulted in a big accident. And that's why I actually did not issue it when I was first told to. There was a delay in the time that the order was issued to have this aircraft squawk the code, and it occurred because I refused to do it. And I explained to the supervisors that were there why I was explaining to do it. And when they came back, I was ordered to do it. I realized somebody was going to do it. I didn't like people doing my dirty work, and I knew they were going to get somebody to do it. So under the threats, I did it. And that's why it's just a haunting thing. So occasionally, once a year, I'll go search and see if anybody even cared about what happened to that flight. So.
Well, thank you very much, Rick Wilder. Thank you for speaking with me about this.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in and for watching. Good night.